Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Aces High. Today we have a little bit something different. So we are going back to the history guy. I liked his channel, and I want to check out some more videos by him. Today we talk about motorsport. So what over here in America, we have our NASCAR and our Indy cars and all that. We have Formula One, all that overseas, and I mean we have it split between everywhere. Of course, there's drifting competitions, there's drag races, there's all kinds of stuff. Uh, People love racing cars, racing motorcycles, racing anything with an engine. I mean, hell, every year on the 4th of July up here in Washington, we have boats that have freaking jet engines strapped to the back. We have our hydroplane races. Incredibly dangerous, really, really fun to watch. So today we are going to be looking at the downside of motor racing, and we're actually going to be looking at the deadliest accident in motorsport history. If you guys haven't checked out, go check out this channel. It's the history guy. I really like him. I just found him. One of you recommended him, I want to say, but I really dig the channel, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to shut up. Go grab yourself a drink, and let's get watching.
Motorsport is enormously popular in the world today. On
Oh,
any
is that Le
given Sunday, there
Mans?
might be as many as 500 million fans tuning in to watch Formula One, the world's most popular form of motorsport. In the United
I'm assuming it was at the Le Mans 24-hour rally. For those of you that don't know, basically you trade off and your team pushes through for 24 hours and you get as much done as you can. And I mean, you get in first place. Hopefully, you're trying to push farther ahead. You're trying to take every corner just a few seconds quicker so that you can shave those after a while at those minutes or those hours or whatever off of other teams. Um,
States, there are an estimated 75 million fans of NASCAR, an industry that brings in more than $2.5 billion in annual revenue.
wow.
Motorsport began almost as soon as the invention of motor vehicles began, and over its history, it has served to both develop and advertise developments in automotive technology. And yet, much of the way that we manage modern motorsport was defined in a single moment, an incident that is surprisingly not all that well known among the world's hundreds of millions of motorsport fans. The 1955 disaster at Le Mans, the deadliest motorsport accident in history, the accident that changed everything, deserves to be remembered.
Before he gets into that, I do just want to touch on NASCAR. You talked about NASCAR for a second, and NASCAR, I just thought it was a fun little history bit. So it's, God, I'm gonna butcher this. I know I don't know the letters, but what National Association or NAS Stock Car Auto Racing. I think that's what it is. Something close to that. Anyway, uh, it was actually started way back in the day from bootleggers. So when we had prohibition, the U.S. couldn't sell alcohol, couldn't buy alcohol, anything like that. We had our bootleggers, and basically these bootleggers who would they would get together, and they would actually try out their super fast cars that they made to outrace each other. They would use them to outrace the cops so they could get away and get on with their bootlegging. Well, they wanted to see who had the fastest car, so they started racing each other, and there you have it, the beginning of NASCAR.
Organized motorsport racing started as early as at least 1894 with the Paris-Toulon
Wow.
Motor Race, sponsored by the newspaper Le Petit Journal, with the hopes of spurring automotive development. The prizes were actually determined by ideal, including ease of driving, not just fastest speed. First prize in the 126-kilometer race was shared between two automobile manufacturers, Pinard and Levasseur and Le Fils de Peugeot-Frey, although the fastest finish was by Jules Albert, the Count de Dion, in his steam-powered de Dion-Bouton. The winning cars mustered between 3 and 4 horsepower and managed speeds between 17 and 19 kilometers per hour. But racing on open roads between cities was dangerous as automobiles became faster and crowds of spectators grew. The 1903 Paris to Madrid race included a number of accidents that caused the death of 5 drivers and 3 spectators and caused the
Wow.
French Parliament to call off the race when the drivers reached the city of Bordeaux. The accidents were attributed to insufficient crowd control and dust obscuring vision, but were also the result of automobile development, where cars were now powered by as much as 45 horsepower engines and reached speeds of up to 140 kilometers per hour, faster than the fastest trains at the time. At the time, some feared that the accidents in the Paris to Madrid race would spell the end of automobile racing. What it did instead is
Really?
shift driving from public roads to racing on a circuit or multiple laps along a circle of closed public roads, and the development of private racetracks, such as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, completed in 1909. By the mid 1920s, cars like the Bugatti Type 35, possibly the most successful racing car model in history, had supercharged engines providing more than 120 horsepower and could achieve top
That's
speeds
solid.
of over 200 kilometers per hour.
That's incredibly fast for that early. Also, as far as the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I've actually been there. I was there for the Indy 500, and it was really cool to see.
What had become commonly known as Grand Prix racing.
Yeah,
But the
okay.
problem was that Grand Prix racing, which focused on the manufacturer's ability to build the fastest car and was the forerunner of today's Formula One racing, was diverging more and more from production models. And thus the motorsport of endurance racing developed as a production-based alternative to the purebred racing machines of Grand Prix racing. Endurance racing differs from Grand Prix in that the goal is to test both the durability of the automobile and driver endurance, either by covering a set long distance as fast as possible or by covering the most distance in a set amount of time. The format encourages innovation in reliability and fuel efficiency, which also offers more benefits to manufacturers in terms of production design. Distances could be truly spectacular, such as the 16,000-kilometer 1908 New York to Paris auto race. But one of the most
Yeah,
popular
that was
formats
super
was a
popular.
24-hour race.
I'd love
In
to
May
watch
of
a video on that.
1923, the first of what was then called the 24-hour Grand Prix of Endurance was held in Le Mans, France. The winning car was a Chenard A Walker that averaged 92 kilometers per hour. That race became what would become known as the most prestigious endurance race in motorsports, the 24 Hours at Le Mans. Run annually since 1923, with the exception of 1936 due to general strikes in France, and the 10-year
Hmm,
period between 1939 and 1949 due to the Second World War, 24 Hours at Le
makes
Mans
sense.
is the world's oldest active sports car race in endurance racing. Following a combined path of private roads and closed public streets, the circuit, called the Circuit de la Sarthe, is one of the longest circuits in the world. Originally 17.26 kilometers long, but shortened to 13.469 kilometers, or about 8 and one-third miles, in 1932. It is known as a particularly fast track, with nearly 85% of the lap time spent at full throttle, placing stress on the engine and drivetrain. While the famously sharp turn at the village of Mulsanne causes tremendous wear on the brakes and suspension. The circuit had a pit straight that was described as frighteningly narrow, at just 3.7 meters or 12 feet wide. The pit was merely
Really?
part of the track, not separated by a pit lane, and there was
Oh
no
my God.
deceleration lane for cars that were pitting. Aside
So
from
you just have to stop
resurfacing,
and
the
dodge the
1932
other
circuit
cars?
had
Oh
been
my
little
God.
changed by the time of the race on a brilliant sunny day, June 11th of 1955. But the cars had changed. In practice runs, the top quality field had blown away track records, with the Ferrari 120 LM clocking a maximum speed of over 290 kilometers per hour down the Mulsanne Straight. It was one of the best entry lists in race history in the golden age of sports cars, and one of the most eagerly anticipated races in a decade. Hundreds of thousands of spectators were expected. The 1955 race had changed from rules, lifting the replenishment window for fuel, oil, and water from 30 to 32 laps, but increasing the allotment for fuel. That generated extra interest in the pits that year and attracted more crowds to that section of the track. The race in 1954 had been close between the winning Ferrari team and second place Jaguar, but the big news in 1955 was the return of a Mercedes team. Mercedes had won the race in 1952, but had been absent in 1953 and 1954. In 1955, Mercedes-Benz had taken the sports car world by storm with the innovative Mercedes 300 SLR, or Sport Light Racing. 300 SLRs were rated by many experts as the best sports cars in the world. The sleek
I
design was
believe it.
based on the company's Formula One car. The engine was longitudinally mounted just behind the front axles, and the car used a welded aluminum tube space frame chassis and
I hated this. I absolutely hated it when they have the offset bumps like this just on one side of a car. They did that for like style and they said it was aerodynamics on certain cars, but like I just thought it was so damn stupid on several cars that they did that. Like there's some cars where it has one bump that goes all the way back and it's just ridiculous.
ultralight electron magnesium alloy bodywork. The car lacked disc brakes, instead using extra-large drum brakes and an innovative
Really?
windbreak that hinged up in the back to slow the car at the end of straightaways. The 300 SLR had taken the sports car world by storm in 1955 winning Italy's Mille Miglia and setting an event record. Further wins secured the 1955 World Sports Car Championship. The three cars of the Mercedes-Benz team were managed by the legendary Alfred Neubauer, who had led the Mercedes-Benz Silver Arrows through a period of racing dominance in the 1930s. For the
Hmm.
1955 race, Neubauer had put together an international team of drivers, which included French racing legend Pierre Levet. Levet had placed many times at 24 hours at Le Mans, but in 1952, Levet had been 4 laps ahead when his car suffered engine failure in the last hour of the race, and that had prevented him from becoming the first and only driver to win the 24 hours at Le Mans single-handedly. Neubauer had been so impressed that he told Levet that the next time that Mercedes returned to the race at the 24 hours at Le Mans, Levet would be on the team.
Could you imagine having the endurance to not only drive for 24 hours in a high stress situation like that, but I mean, be winning after 23 hours right up until your car broke down? It's incredible.
Levet, who was also a world-class ice hockey player and tennis player, was nearly
Wow.
50 years old in 1955. Levet and his co-driver, American John Fitch, had decided to keep a regular pace on the first day and attack on day 2 when the other drivers were tired. In the third hour of the race, around lap 35 for the leaders, another Mercedes-Benz team was vying for the lead versus Jaguar, and Levet was driving, running 6th. Jaguar driver Michael Hawthorne, who had already run the fastest lap in race history at 4 minutes 6.6 seconds, had just passed Levet and driver Lance
Wow.
Macklin driving an Austin Healey 100 when he got called to pit. The track had a slight kink just before the pit. Following the rules, Hawthorne raised his hand to show that he was pitting and braked hard to get into the narrow pit lane. The advanced disc brakes of the Jaguar slowed the car quickly. Macklin, having been overtaken by Hawthorne in the Jaguar, was more likely concerned with Levet's Mercedes coming from behind him, and also had to brake quickly to avoid a collision with Hawthorne. As he braked, his wheels slipped over the right-hand edge of the track. It is still not clear if Macklin briefly lost control because of going off the track, or if he was simply reflexively swerving as a result, but he came across the central track right in front of Levet, who had been closing at over 200 kilometers per hour. The fast braking and the foray off the track threw up a cloud of smoke and dust, obscuring Levet's view. There was no time for Levet to react. He slammed into Macklin's Austin Healey.
Oh,
Reportedly,
wow.
Levet had time to throw up his hand, signaling Argentinian driver Juan Manuel Fangio in the Mercedes following him, allowing him time to react and saving his life. Macklin's car careened across the track and struck a wall, killing a spectator, but Macklin got out unscathed. Levet's front wheel had ridden up the back
Jesus
of the left rear of
Christ.
Macklin's Austin Healey. The car careened into the air, tumbling. Drivers wore no seatbelts then, positing that they were better off being thrown clear than caught in a burning wreck. 49-year-old Pierre Levet was thrown from the car, crushing his skull, killing him
Oh my
instantly. The
God.
car hit the 4-foot embankment separating the track and spectators. Because of the kink in the track, the car was on a trajectory straight into the spectators, who were massed up to watch the cars entering the pit area. As it bounced off the barrier, it flew into a concrete stairwell, part of the stands, and disintegrated. Parts of the car, the engine, the radiator, the front axle careened into the packed crowd. The bonnet or engine hood
Oh my
flew through the air like a
God.
knife. A driver in the pit said of the scene, "The dead and dying were everywhere. The cries of pain, anguish, and despair screamed catastrophe. I stood as if in a dream, too horrified to even think." Sources still disagree over the total death toll, but most indicate that in addition to Pierre Levet, at least 83 spectators were killed and more than 120 others were injured. It was the deadliest
Wow.
accident in the history
It's
of
over 200
motorsport.
people.
The Mercedes team decided that they would quit the race in respect for those who were killed. Across the large track, many of the spectators didn't even know the accident had occurred until the announcement that Mercedes was quitting the race. Levet's co-driver, American John Fisk, and Levet's wife, Denise Bouillon, witnessed the accident from the pit area. Race organizers decided that they would not
Oh
end
my
the race. They
God.
were
Could you
afraid if the
imagine?
hundreds of thousands of spectators started going home, it would clog the roads and emergency vehicles wouldn't be able to come. The Jaguar team was invited also to quit, but they declined, and Hawthorne ended up winning the race and setting a new track record, although he received quite a lot of criticism in the French press for celebrating his victory, and many people blamed the accident on Hawthorne. In response, several countries immediately banned auto racing, including France, Spain, Germany, and Switzerland, until safety was improved for spectators. Switzerland
How
still
long
has
was
a
it
ban on
banned?
circuit racing in force today, except for electric
Really?
vehicles. The race organizers at Le Mans made significant changes, widening the pit, adding a deceleration lane, and eliminating the track kink. The impact went beyond Le Mans and endurance racing. Track safety became a defining movement in Formula One. The United States formed an entirely new motorsport governing body, the United States Auto Club, as a result of the accident.
Hmm.
As an industry, motorsport became more focused on track safety and technology practices. The tragedy has been described as the accident that changed everything.
I believe it.
There was a
Changed
protracted
motorsports.
official investigation that eventually cleared Hawthorne of any wrongdoing and decided that no driver was at fault. It was, they decided, simply a racing accident. However, they did blame the death of the spectators on poor track design and safety standards. To this day, people still disagree over who was responsible for the crash, but one thing is certain: the 1955 Le Mans disaster deserves to be remembered.
I
I'm the
believe it.
History Guy, and I hope you
I
enjoyed
agree.
this edition of my series of short
That's
snippets
actually
of
really
forgotten
cool.
history about 10 minutes long. And if you
The
did enjoy,
angels. Okay, and okay, very cool. Um, I always love that channel. I mean, it's only my second video that I've seen on there, but very interesting videos, kind of off videos in history, and it's just a lot of fun. I'm tomorrow, starting tomorrow. I'm gonna hop back into a little bit of Pearl Harbor. I watched one video before I took my break, and now it's kind of time to watch the other. It's like 8 or 9, something like that, that cover the attack on Pearl Harbor. I understand that the series continues through World War II. I'm not gonna watch the whole thing through World War II, but I am gonna watch the 8 or 9 videos that cover the hour by hour through Pearl Harbor. Anyway, hope you guys dug it. Till next time, this is Say and I'm out.